Hi, this is Alessio. Hope you're well. In this video, we're going to ask the question, is it likely that Bitcoin could drop down to 20,000? Join me. Alright guys, welcome back. Let me just tell you where I am before I start talking about Bitcoin. I've come to a location in England you might have heard of called Cornwall. I'm actually in Newquay, Cornwall, and I'm standing in front of this hotel you might have seen before in a movie. It's called the Headland Hotel, and in case you're wondering why it looks familiar to you, because as I was driving over here, I looked at this hotel from a distance and I thought, wow, this looks creepy. And I've seen this building before, haven't I? In some kind of horror film or some kind of scary movie. And it turns out I was right. This hotel was used in a film called The Witches, a story written by Roald Dahl, and it's about a group of witches who come together in this hotel in a conference. I have to tell you, even now, looking at this hotel from a distance gives me the creeps, which is no wonder it's called the Witches Hotel. All right, guys, let's talk about Bitcoin. So as we know, Bitcoin has dropped by about 50% from its highs near 64,000 all the way down to 30,000 and recently just near 29,000. So the question is, okay, now we've had this 50% drop or retracement or correction in Bitcoin. Is it possible or likely that Bitcoin could drop down all the way to 20,000? There's a lot of speculation and anxiety about Bitcoin potentially dropping down to 20,000. So let's talk about this. So whenever you're doing chart analysis, as I'm sure you know, you have to make a distinction between what is probable and what is possible, because they're not the same thing. When you think about it, anything is possible, okay? So there's a possibility that anything could happen to Bitcoin. So is it possible that Bitcoin could drop down to 20,000? Yes. But the question is it likely? Is it probable? So I have to tell you guys, my own gut feeling on this point is no, probably not, unless the stock market does something. So personally, I think it's much more likely for Bitcoin to hold above the 30,000, 25,000 price range than fall all the way to 20,000. I think the 25 to 30,000 price support is going to be very strong for Bitcoin. And I think it's much more likely for Bitcoin to remain above that support zone than fall all the way down to 20,000. Personally, I think it's much more likely for Bitcoin to head towards 100,000 by the end of this year than to go to 20,000 anytime soon. But again, it's only a gut feeling at the moment. Now, the reason why I think it's less likely for Bitcoin to drop all the way to 20,000 is because what is needed to drive Bitcoin that low is some kind of catalyst, some kind of force. And at the moment, the only force, the only major catalyst that perhaps could drive Bitcoin down to that kind of low price, like 20,000, would be if something terrible happened, if something catastrophic happened on the stock markets. So what I mean by that is if the S&P, for example, if the stock market dropped below its June lows, if the S&P, if the stock market took out its June lows near 4,063, then that volatility, that sharp drop in the stock market could potentially drag Bitcoin down with it. We've seen this correlation, this positive correlation between the stock market and Bitcoin. So yeah, if the stock market, and it's an if the S&P were to drop and take out the June lows, then it's probable that it could drag Bitcoin down with it, okay? Potentially down to the 20,000 levels. That might be the catalyst, the force that could drag Bitcoin down to those levels. But at the moment, as I'm making this video, the S&P is not showing any signs of breakdown, okay? So I think that unless the S&P, unless the stock market actually falls and takes out the June lows, I think the probability of Bitcoin falling down to 20,000 levels is probably lower. Now look, could I be wrong? Yes, of course. There's always a risk and there's always a possibility that Bitcoin could drop to 20,000. As I mentioned before, there's a difference between what is possible and what is probable or what is likely. So personally, my own gut feeling tells me that on the balance of probabilities, unless the stock market does something, unless the stock market takes out the June lows, then I think it's less likely for Bitcoin to drop all the way to 20,000. Again, I think it's much more likely for Bitcoin to remain above the 25,000 to 30,000 support range. All right, guys, hope this video helps. And if it has, please give it a thumbs up. I look forward to seeing you in the next video update. Cheers.